Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. We are from Group 5 and our final year project is on modeling of domestic violence in Malaysia.
My name is Syahirah Binti and I will explain on our introduction part of our project. Domestic violence is referred as national abuse and it happens when one constrained by physical or mental abuse. Some later scientists, Chan, Lin and Liu in 2018 revealed that domestic violence also includes physical, mental, economic bullying, control threats or other illegal attacks. The victim of domestic violence can get a protection by law in using an Act A1538, which is Domestic Violence Amendment Act 2017. There are four types of domestic violence, which is physical, financial, emotional, and sexual abuse. The physical abuse is involved the use of force against the victim that can cause harm to the victim. It is includes slapping, kicking, hair pulling, and others. Next is emotional abuse. Emotional abuse is the action that intended to destroy an individual's self-esteem. It involves continuing and ceasing verbal assault at humiliating and degrading the victim. The third is sexual abuse. The research by Motado states that sexual abuse is not just rape and sexual assault. It also involves and other insulting behaviors such as exposing partner body to friends or forcing the partner to post for porn. And the last one is financial abuse. Financial abuse is happen when the perpetrator has controlled the victim by manipulate the economic resources. Domestic violence is a major problem that happens in Malaysia nowadays, and somehow it also gives an impact to a younger generation. It is a big problem because the younger generation is the one who will be leading Malaysia in the future. Domestic violence also will create an unhealthy environment, especially to the families and society. Therefore, this paper is focused on reducing the number of violence in Malaysia by modeling the domestic violence. There are two objectives of our research. First, to estimate the best parameter using Poisson distribution that describe the domestic violence. And second, to determine whether the data of domestic violence follow the Poisson distribution by using chi-square goodness of fit test. And our research hypothesis is, for the H alternative, the data of domestic violence does not follow the Poisson distribution. We use a secondary data for our research. The data of domestic violence that we use in our research is obtained by our collaboration with Polis Diraja Malaysia (PDRM) in Bukit Aman. The research will pinpoint which state have the highest frequency of domestic violence in Malaysia. We have three limitations in our research. Since we use a secondary data, a few crucial information is not provided, and because of that, we lack of sufficient data. And because of we collaborate with Polis Diraja Malaysia, some data that we need is confidential. Our study is to provide in-depth understanding of a woman who is a domestic violence victim and as a support system that the victims can rely on for a guidance. There are some non-government organizations that can support the domestic violence victims such as Women AIDS Organization WAO or Women Center for Change WCC. Both of the organizations can help the victims who is still struggling to escape from their abusive partner. Several variables that we use in our research. The first variable is the gender of perpetrator and the victim. Coleman, Kaiser and Jensen in 2008 studied that majority of the woman is a victim of domestic violence, while Jenley in 1995 studied that man is the most to be a perpetrator. We move to the next variable, which is the race of the perpetrator and the victim. Awan and Hariharan in 2011 conclude that the majority of the victim is from the Indian group and followed by Malay and Chinese. And for the next is the occupation of the victim and perpetrator. The partner with an occupation can decrease the number of domestic violence because from Shiraz in 2016, they studied that the occupation have played a crucial role for a Saudi women where they can reduce the number of abuse. For the motive of domestic violence, Duke Pettingill and Maurice Ambroski in 2010 has studied that the drug and alcohol is one of the motive of domestic violence, and it also found that the money argument is also one of the motive of domestic violence by study made by D. Morris Benson, Foxhill and Van Wyk in 2003. While Yap and Piquet in 2019 has studied that there is a significant association between the family income and the number of domestic violence. We move to the next variable, which is the relationship between the perpetrator and victim. Jelly in 1995 believed that the relationship is an advantage to the perpetrator as the perpetrator already know their victim situation. So Kramer in 1999 has concluded that the highest domestic violence is between husband and wife relationship and the lowest is between those who is unmarried couple and who share a children.
Awak in Hari Alani 2011 have analysed that the older males are the more empowering than the younger males, and the younger women have the high probability to be a victim. This is supported by Cikara Jaka Malik Singla and Datawal in 2013. For the place of incidents, Bosser et al. In 2018 has studied that the domestic violence is begin when the perpetrator and victim has contact in a one place.
To Canton 2020, poison distribution is a statistical distribution that indicates how frequently an occurrence happens in a given time frame.
Okay, next we proceed to chapter 3. My name is Fatin Hazwani Binti Mamat, and I will explain in detail about methodology part. For the source of the data, we use the secondary data of domestic violence that we obtained from Royal Malaysian Police, which is PDRM. The data is from 2016 until 2019. We categorize the data as nominal data since we use the data from January 2016 until December 2019 as our subject of interest. Next, we use Poisson distribution to estimate the best parameter, which is lambda that describes the domestic violence. To estimate the parameter, we use the method of moment and method of maximum likelihood. Thus, to determine whether to choose the lambda value between MUM and MLE, we also calculate the mean square error MSE. We choose the lambda for the method that has the lowest MSE value to be the best parameter that will be the data of domestic violence, whether it follow Poisson distribution or not. We use chi-squared goodness of fit test that we analyze using our studio. Firstly, we use discrete analysis. This method was used to check whether there was an error, minimum and maximum values. Not only that, we use the data to check the validity and missing cases accessed in the data. We display the discrete analysis in the graph. This is because when we display the data in the graph, we can clearly see whether there was an error or missing cases exist. Next, for the step in method of moment, firstly, we let X represent the frequency of domestic violence in Malaysia. And we assume that frequency of domestic violence in Malaysia followed Poisson distribution. Then the parameter lambda is being calculated by using our studio. Or we can use the formula as shown below. For further discussion on how we use the method of moment, later my friend will discuss in detail about the method in chapter 4. Okay, we proceed to how to estimate lambda value using method of maximum likelihood estimation. Firstly, we assume the domestic violence data is distributed identically. Then we find the probability of Poisson distribution, Px, and then we find the ln of probability of Poisson distribution. Lastly, in order to get the lambda value using MLE, then we run the analysis using Excel to find the maximum lambda value. Furthermore, the last method that we use is chi-squared goodness of fit test. We use this method to test whether the frequency of domestic violence for every month can be fitted by using Poisson distribution. Before we use this method, there was an assumption that need to be fulfilled. The first assumption is one categorical variable, which is the variable can be dichotomous, nominal or ordinal. We use a month as the categorical variable and it is nominal since the data are from January 2016 until December 2019. Next, observation must be independent, which indicates that there is no connection between any of the cases. For example, the occurrence of domestic violence for January 2016 provide no information about the occurrence of domestic violence for February 2016. Thirdly, the group of the categorical variables have to be mutually exclusive, where in this case, the month cannot occur at the same time. Lastly, every group of the categorical variable is required to have at least 5 expected frequencies. Next, we proceed to chi-squared goodness of fit test. In this method, we separate the data into interval. For example, we separate the sample data for 4 years from 2016 until 2019 by the frequency of domestic violence for each month. The number of points falling within the interval are then compared with the expected number of points of each interval. There are two values are required when we run the chi-squared goodness of fit test, which is expected values and observed values. Then we analyze the data using RStudio to obtain the chi-squared value.
Assalamualaikum, my name is Sabrina Binti Zainudin and I will proceed with chapter 4, result and analysis.
First, I will be discuss about the descriptive analysis. The first variable is the occurrence of domestic violence in each state. From the graph, we can see that state that contribute to the highest number of domestic violence in Malaysia is Selangor, followed by Johor, where it has the second highest number of domestic violence in each year. The lowest number of domestic violence in Malaysia is Melaka. The second variable is the gender of the victim. Female victim has the highest number of domestic violence compared to male victim. It also shows that female victim continue to be the majority of the victim in each year, which 3 times higher than the male victim. The third variable is the race of victim and perpetrator. For Malay, we can see that it has the highest rank of domestic violence for both victim and perpetrator for 4 years consecutively, while for Chinese, it shows that it has the lowest cases for domestic violence in each year. The fourth variable is the age of victim and perpetrator. The highest rank for the age group that involved in the domestic violence between victim and perpetrator is those whose age between 26 years old until 45 years old. The lowest rank of the age group for the victim is between 25 years and below, while for the perpetrator is those whose age 46 years and above. The fifth variable is the occupations of victim and perpetrator. The victim and perpetrator from the unemployment category have the highest rank in domestic violence cases in Malaysia between 2016 to 2019. The unemployment category includes students and housewives. Based on the graph, it also shows that there is a 3 category that have the lowest rank in domestic violence cases, which is government sector, police or army, and retiree. We will proceed with the motive of domestic violence cases in Malaysia between 2016 until 2019. The highest rank that contribute to the most significant motive of domestic violence cases in Malaysia is misunderstanding between victim and perpetrator. The second highest of frequency of domestic violence is because of financial problem. Next variable is the relationship between the perpetrator and victim. Husband and both family group reported significantly more cases compared to the other 4 groups, while the lowest frequency of domestic violence between 2016 until 2019 is between wife and the victim. The last variable is the place of incident of domestic violence cases in Malaysia between 2016 until 2019. Location that stand out the most is at house, where most of the domestic violence cases occurred, followed by public place as the second highest, and the lowest is at place of worship. First, we have to estimate the parameter for poison distributions. We are using 2 methods. First is method of moment, and the second one is maximum likelihood estimation. The value that we got for method of moment is 463.729167, and the value that we got for maximum likelihood estimation is 482.988987. In order for us to know which parameter estimations will be used for this data, we choose the lowest mean square error. From the summarized table, we can see that mean square error for method of moment has the lowest compared to the maximum likelihood estimations. Therefore, we are using the method of moment in order to fitting the distributions to data of domestic violence. Next, to fulfill the second objective, which is to determine does the domestic violence follow a Poisson distributions, we are using the chi-square goodness of fit test. In testing hypothesis, the decision rule is to reject the H-norm, which chi-squared calculated must greater or equal to the chi-squared type. Since the chi-squared 182.71 is greater than chi-squared type, which is 62.8066, and the p-value is less than 0.05, it rejects H-norm.
Okay, next we proceed to chapter 5, conclusion and recommendation part. Since the MSE value for the method of moment is the lowest compared to method of maximum likelihood, thus we use the parameter estimate using method of moment to be the best parameter that describes domestic violence. Thus, we can conclude that the frequency of domestic violence in Malaysia between 2016 until 2019 has an average cases of 464 cases per month. Next, for the conclusion of chi-square goodness of fit test, we find out that the p-value is less than alpha 0.05. Thus, we can conclude that the frequency of the domestic violence in Malaysia does not follow a Poisson distribution. Next, we proceed to recommendation part. For the recommendation from this study, it is suggested for the local authorities to make a collaboration with the government to build more centers or shelter in the victim areas for them to get psychological or financial support. Not only that, parents, teachers and local authorities need to start educating the younger generation about domestic violence. Furthermore, since women tend to be the victim of domestic violence, women can learn self-defense to protect themselves. Lastly, for the recommendation for the future study, it is suggested to conduct a different study that use a different type of factors such as family income, length of the marriage, size of the family and others to determine whether this factor give an effect to the occurrence of domestic violence or not. Not only that, it is interesting if the future studies can be conducted to analyze the grown-up children of family with a history of domestic abuse to determine whether living in abusive environment would cause them to be violent or destructive in their own marriage.